and welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 1st of October. So coming to the first article, largely these are two articles which I have somehow combined because the gist of both these articles is the same. It is context with regards to the economic slowdown as well as the rising unemployment in India. Now basically it is this article that I have focused more upon in the analysis because this is an article that is analytical. This article here is more factual. It has a lot of data. It will give you data in the context of unemployment in almost all the sectors of the economy. So if some of you are interested in getting this particular knowledge, knowing about these facts and figures, definitely you can go ahead reading this particular article. But if you want to focus on analysis, which is the core demand of UPSC, this is the article to go for. So that is how I have made my discussion for both these articles. So coming to the analysis, first and foremost, the context, as I've told you, primarily is that of rural unemployment. It is not unemployment in particular, but largely there's one section of unemployment which is getting very ignored. That is the rural unemployment. So that is the entire context. Coming to the analysis, first and foremost, the analysis that has been given is in the context of the economic slowdown. Now we all know by now that yes, economic slowdown for India has become a reality. India is suffering from an economic slowdown. This is something that is continuing for 2.5 years now. This is what is now reflecting in several figures and facts by the government itself. Another thing that is a sign of this economic slowdown are the several steps that the government is taking. It has reversed most of its budget measures also, which clearly is showing that even the government as of now is highly concerned vis-a-vis the economic slowdown that is facing the country. So that is important. Another thing that is important here is in the context of climate change. Now if you will see the previous article, the title itself is the link between jobs, farming and climate, and that is one important analysis that becomes relevant for this article because it is linking climate also in the context of economy and unemployment, and that is why this is a newer development. Now basically what this editorial is talking in the context of climate change is that if you must have seen the recent speech by in the United Nations Summit, Environment Summit, that is where a teenager named Greta Thunberg. Now Greta Thunberg is a teenager and her speech has gone viral on social media also, and so this particular climate activist is now important for you as an example to talk about. So she has clearly highlighted that how the world is acting in a very unethical manner, where it is simply going ahead with industrialization, not taking into consideration the impacts that rapid industrialization is having on climate. Now, isn't India also planning to do something, is what is being argued in the article. Definitely, if there is unemployment in the nation, how can unemployment be removed from the nation? This can only happen if more and more jobs are what are created. How will jobs be created if there is development? How will development take place if there is industrialization? So, in some context, India is also doing exactly what is against climate change. So, in this context, the article is adding that instead of focusing on the conventional model of increasing jobs by industrialization, India should work on some alternate model, which the article is offering, which you will just understand a bit later. So that is the entire gist that has been offered in the article in the context of climate change, that because of climate change also, the conventional model of industrialization leading to more and more jobs is what India should not adopt. So that is what has been linked, the link between jobs, unemployment and climate change. So that is important. Another thing that has been talked about is in the context of the PLFS survey. We have discussed this in very much detail. This is the periodic labor force survey report which had just been released after the election results were out. They showed that there is a dramatic rise in unemployment rate. This was the highest in 45 years, that is since 1972 to 1973. Till date, this unemployment rate in the country is what is very high. And in this unemployment rate also, the article is highlighting there are two categories where unemployment rate has been high. One is the urban female and the second is the rural males. So this is one area where unemployment is very high. We have discussed articles that have discussed that why is there unemployment very high amongst the urban females. Now rural male aspect is what has been discussed in this particular article. So that is one linkage that you need to understand here. And indeed, it is the PLFS survey which clearly reflects that yes, there is an economic crisis in the country, there is a crisis in the context of unemployment, so that is important. Now what the government basically is doing is that the government is focusing on urban policies. For example, the government as a step has reduced corporate tax. This is with the intention that if corporate tax will be reduced, there will be more investment, there will be more companies that will be forming in India or maybe coming, foreign companies getting attracted to India, and this might lead in more and more jobs which will give a push to the economy. So that is what the government is thinking. But this is not the real solution here. That is what the editorial is arguing. The editorial gives us a wonderful example of biscuit manufacturers. Now basically, we all know that the automobile sector is facing some challenges in the present context because automobile sector is one of the most prominent sectors. That is something that is being viewed by the media of the nation. But there are smaller sectors like biscuit manufacturers also. Now it has clearly been seen, it has been reported that biscuit manufacturing is facing a slowdown. It has let go of several of its employees. Now why is this happened is because the demand in rural areas for biscuits has suddenly fallen. If the income is not going to be generated, the people in rural areas who are largely poor people of India, they will invest their money in basic necessities like food rather than some basic luxury like a biscuit packet. And because of that, this particular sector is also getting impacted, and that is what the editorial is discussing. Another thing that you have to understand here is that India's largest population is in the rural areas. How many urban families will buy more than one flat screen TV is a question to be asked. The demand for flat screen TV, the demand for several other areas for that matter, other electronics or vehicles is what is going to generate in the rural areas of India. So if income is not going to be generated there, then how can economy move ahead? How will economy develop is the question that the editorial is posing, and that is what the editorial is forcing the government to think about, that the government has to focus on the area which is the key to spur economic growth rather than having its policies targeted only on the urban areas. Focus should be on the rural areas. Rural areas are the areas where poor people in India are residing. And what often happens is that because of the economic slowdown, incomes have fallen. And this will prompt the farmers in the rural areas to take more and more debts. And even when the economy will suddenly rise, it will improve. The farmers and the rural population there will be repaying the debt. So even when the economy will improve, the demand will not improve, and that is where the government has to now correct the situation. Is what is being, the gist of this article is just this, that focus has to be on the rural areas, and that is what has been conveyed here. Another important analysis is in the context of the agriculture sector. We all know agriculture sector in India is facing distress. This is not something that is new to this particular year. Rather, a zero growth, a negative growth in agriculture sector is what has been seen in approximately 5 out of the past 9 years, and this is what is of cause of concern. This is the primary reason because of which rural distress is there. Rural demand has fallen. The youth in rural areas is not employed. This is what is the reason. So that is important. Another important analysis is in the context of the solutions that the author has offered. The solution is that there is a need to improve agriculture production. This will help beat climate change also. If we are focusing on the agriculture sector rather than industrialization, then climate change is also not a challenge for us, and through this employment will be generated in the rural areas, which will help push the economy. So this is the solution that has to be focused on. Focus of the policy of the government has to be on the rural areas rather than the urban areas, which is the trend as of now. So this is what is the entire analysis, indeed an important one. If you are asked questions in the context of economic slowdown, you must talk about the rural unemployment. If you have to discuss about agriculture sector, there again this article will come handy to you. So that is how you have to use this article, very, very relevant. So that's about this particular article. Coming to the next article, a test for judicial review in India. The context of this article is a recent judgment that has come in UK, and this is basically a discussion of the relationship between judiciary versus the executive. Now basically, we all know that our system of functioning of the parliament as well as the idea of judicial review, all of this is what has largely been adopted from United Kingdom, because we were ruled by the Britishers for a very, very long time. So a large part of our constitution is what has been taken up from them. So any development in their country in the context of the parliament is what becomes important for us also. So that is why I personally found this article to be a little relevant. So you should know about this. Now basically you should know about the recent judgment that has been given by the Supreme Court in United Kingdom. Now this is context with regards to the actions of the Prime Minister Mr. Boris Johnson in UK. Now basically Mr. Boris Johnson had prorogued the Parliament in United Kingdom. Prorogue means that he had brought an end to the session of the Parliament in UK. Now basically you should know that when he was to fight his election, Mr. Boris Johnson, he had promised that he will ensure that that Brexit is what does take place. Now, what he was intending is that the timeline or the limit for Brexit that he has given is the 31st of October. Now, basically, he did not want that when he introduces the bill for Brexit in the Parliament of UK, that the bill should be discussed for a very long time. So his intention was that the bill should be discussed for a very, very narrow span of time, and that is why he abruptly prorogued the parliament once and then demanded that the parliament should reconvene on the 14th of October, because between the 14th of October and the 31st of October the time will be less, and so parliament in UK will not be able to examine all the aspects of the Brexit. So that is the context of this issue, and as a result of which he had prorogued the parliament. This was something that, because on the suggestion of the Prime Minister, the Queen there had signed the order, but the matter is what went to finally the smaller courts like the Scottish Court of Session. But later the matter is what went to the Supreme Court in UK, and it was what was examined by a bench comprising of 11 judges. This is the highest bench that can be fought, and as per this bench, the decision is what has been called as ultra vires. This decision is what has been called as a wrongful decision, and that is the entire issue that you should know in the context of the judgment that has been given by the Supreme Court in the United Kingdom. So this is what is important. Now, what is the relevance of this in the context of India? Only 2 points are important. First and foremost, in the context of the Jammu and Kashmir bill, and another bill which is the reservation for the economically weaker section. Both these bills were passed in such hurry by the government is what is being drawn as a parallel to the case of United Kingdom. For instance, in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, the matter is what the bill was what had been raised on August 5th, and the parliament had its last session on the August of 7th. So in just 2 days are what were given for this bill to get passed by the parliament, both in the Lok Sabha as well as in the Rajya Sabha. Even some of the parliamentarians were not even given copies of this bill before it was introduced, and this is something that is not a part of the parliamentary convention, or for that matter the rules of procedure and conduct of business in parliament in India are well defined, and this calls for these kind of bills to be discussed with a longer time span compared to what has happened now. The scope of debate is what has been reduced in these 2 bills, and that is the criticism that is being drawn here, that just like in UK these bills were declared ultra vires, a similar movement is what the Supreme Court in India should also take. So that is what is important. Yes, in some exceptional cases there are special powers that are given to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha as well as the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, but the editorial is discussing that if these special powers are given to them, then special restraint is what has to be maintained. These special powers have to be used very, very rarely and very, very judiciously. These shouldn't be misused by the government just like this to impose these kind of bills without a due debate in the parliament. The parliament is the temple of democracy. If these kind of decisions are taken in such a manner, then democracy is what is threatened in our nation, and that is what has been drawn as a link and a parallel with the Supreme Court's judgment of United Kingdom, and the responsibility of the judiciary in India is what has been talked about. So indeed I found this comparison relevant. And because UK is an important country, we have a lot of our provisions that we have taken from them. This entire issue of UK and the special judgment in United Kingdom is also what I personally found important, and you should know this particular issue. The article is relevant for General Studies paper 2, so that is where you can use it. So that's about this particular article, and that's about our discussion for today. These were the only relevant articles. I thank you all for watching the video.